So once again, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're coming and joining us today. Welcome to another Persia monthly webinar session. This month to mark Earth Day, this Friday, we are fortunate to be joined by a fantastic scholar who's been working on environment and water resources globally, but also more particularly with regard to Iran. Persia Educational Foundation, as you know, is a foundation that is dedicated to promotion of education and awareness raising among Iranian descent individuals throughout the globe. We're based in the UK, and we offer a number of educational spaces and scholarship opportunities. One of the services that we offer are these monthly webinars. At this particular time, as we know, Iran is facing a great deal of challenges with regards to its water and environmental security. We're fortunate to hear from Professor Nazemi this afternoon. Ali Nazemi is an associate professor in the Department of Building, Civil and Environmental Engineering at Concord University in Montreal, Canada. He also happens to be the co-chair of hydroclimatology panel of the World Climate Research Program's Global Energy and Water Exchange Core Project. So we are very fortunate to have someone with us who obviously is not only knowledgeable in this space, but is leading research and informing us and decision makers with regards to the present and future of Iran's environment and water resources. So without taking any more of your time, Professor Nazemi, welcome to our webinar this afternoon. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And we are eager to hear from you and learn from you as to what we're able to do as citizens to improve the future of Iran.
Thank you very much, Dr. Danish, for very kind introduction of myself. And thank you very much for Persia Education Foundation for giving me this privilege to be here on just 2 days before the Earth Day of 2022, which I guess is going to be an opportunity for all of us to give a reflection on the situation in our motherland, environmental security in general, and water security in particular. So today I would like to bring your attention to the condition of Iran, and I would start my presentation with a little bit of global view on the position of Iran in the current time of the world. And then I should mention that the most of the work that I'm going to basically report in my work, in my slides, is going to be based on the published paper that I have privileged to work with a number of colleagues around the world directly and indirectly with my many postdoc and students throughout the years that helped me to really crystallize the message that I would like to give this year. So they are not here today. Their name is not here, but definitely their knowledge and contribution are embedded in these slides. So before I start talking about the situation of Iran, I would like you to just do a little bit of reflection on the time that we are living. Basically, we are now living in a new geological era called Anthropocene. And Anthropocene basically has been nailed by the author John McNeil and a few of the Nobel lecturers throughout the end of the 20th century and early 21st century, that basically the concept was coined in the book called Something New Under the Sun. I don't want to go to the book, and what is telling the book is a very nice report of the environmental condition of the world in the 20th century. I really recommend this book for everybody to read, but the take-home message is that basically now human is the fundamental power of the nature, perhaps more than other natural factors that can affect the life on the planet Earth. And there are a number of revelation of that. I don't want to go to all of them. I just want to remind of us just a couple of days before Earth Day, some of the properties that we are now having in the world, and we did not have it basically even 200 years ago. So what are those? We are completely occupying the land. The number of population that we have is a very good indicator of that comparing to other species. We are not overusing the water and land resources, but also this overusing to extent that they start some sort of new feedback effect, natural feedback effect in the environment. For instance, global warming is one good example of that. We are also not only starting new natural cycles, but we also have initiated new emerging cycles of matters that have not been in the planet Earth even 100 years ago. And that is, for instance, a good example of that is microplastics. And while biodiversity has been declined tremendously, it has been a report just published before the end of the 2021 that we have actually sacrificed 40% of the biodiversity in the world in the last 40 years. However, on the other hand, the number of species in certain species that actually provide food for human beings has been increased tremendously. And not only that, but also we are able to clone plants, animals, and even human at this stage. So basically, we become some sort of the god of the planet Earth, the position that we have never been faced before. And basically that provides a new concept, a duality between human and nature, something that we were not very familiar with that, as if we go to the genealogy of human being, that basically up to 12, 13,000 years ago, we were basically hunter and gatherers in different parts of the world. So now, instead of like working with nature, we started a new duality, and that is basically the duality between man and the nature. And that actually, in this context, that we actually starting to words such as sustainability start to emerge in English language. The time that actually it was after the Industrial Revolution, the first time that we are seeing people are talking about sustainability, because then these people start realizing this duality. There are many, many definitions of sustainability based on the duality between human and nature, but one of them are very, very interesting by Francois Lyotard, the French postmodern philosopher, and he defined basically the sustainability as a grand narrative that basically describes an ideal state that there is no crisis between human and nature. So basically, there are philosophers can talk about this statement quite extensively, but as a hydrologist, I would like to focus on some aspect of this statement. And basically we have a discussion. In this discussion, we have basically two parts, human and nature. And what we are talking is about this basically relationship between these two. So basically, these two dual system, we can combine them together and look at them as a kind of hybrid system, and we can call this system as a natural human system. And basically, based on the Lyotard, the situation between this relationship between this system, in this human and natural human system, is basically undisturbed, is not a balanced relationship. And that's basically what is the current condition, which is indefinitely unsustainable because of this duality between human and nature, and the fact that now we become one of the fundamental forces of nature, and we are working only for our basically needs and what we are actually want to achieve, not what environment and nature necessarily want to achieve. So as a hydrologist, let me just take the environment out and just put one of the elements of environment in, and that is what I am actually expert in, and that's water. So let's actually see in this human water system, now we are basically converging from natural human system to only one component of the nature, and that's water. And let's actually see where we are able to see this revelation of human and water. So water is actually in the nature in many different parts in atmosphere. Atmosphere is perhaps one of the largest reserves of water. Our precipitation are coming from atmosphere. It is vital for the natural water availability. Landscape is also the store of water. The existence of lakes and rivers is a good revelation of that, and everybody has experienced that. Vegetation basically is a huge reserve of water. It's actually good to know that between 40 to 60% of the trees weight is basically contain water. And water is actually existent in all parts of the tree, from the roots to the leaves on the crown of the tree. In the soil and ground as well, it is actually sometimes it's interesting that you know that the soil that you are walking over, and perhaps it looks very stiff and firm, has 40% water in its probes, and that's where the water, the roots of the trees are getting the water from. The roots of the trees are not getting the water from the precipitation, they get it from the soil, and that is basically the reserve providing the water to vegetation. And all of these are connected to each other, water from atmosphere to the landscape, to the vegetation, to the soil and ground. And that's actually making a timeless, immortal cycle. We know it as hydrological cycle. On the other hand, human. Let's look at where human uses the water. Obviously, for drinking, we cannot live more than 3 days, normal life without drinking water. We're gonna go to a kind of like having hallucination, and then perhaps after 4 more few days, we're gonna basically pass. In our food is an extremely reserve of water. One of the habits that I developed since I was a PhD student in UK was actually time to time going to a British pub, having a pint of Guinness and a burger. And it is actually mind-blowing to understand that the burger that we are eating actually in a normal British pub includes 700 gallons of water. That's equivalent of more than 3,000 liters of water for production purposes, that this burger come in front of us, and then we are enjoying it by drinking it and have a sip of beer. In industry, our industries are water thirsty, not for the consumption of the water per se, but actually for the cooling effect. And that's actually increased the water temperature, and therefore the quality of water tremendously in different parts of the world. Energy, the place I'm living in, Quebec, is the primary source of energy, which is 99.3% of the total energy consumption is coming from hydropower, which means that we are making dams on the river banks and basically regulate the lakes in order to make hydropower that then we are able to be online and give such a presentation. And our culture, something that is mistakenly not very much given attention to. Our cultural well-being is very much dependent on water. I just want to remind you about this ceremony that every year happening in India, and more than 20 millions of Hindus are going to the Gang River and doing this spiritual bath that they are doing. And that is actually tremendously changed the quality of water down the streams. People who are relying on that water for drinking purposes. You might say that might be far from us, but even we have these communities in Iran. One of the very well-known communities in Iran from ancient time in our motherland is Mandein, that are basically the followers of the John the Baptist. And every year they are going to the Karun River and they are doing this spiritual bath. And imagine now that when Karun is drained, what happened to the culture of these people that are living there for thousands of years. It's not only important for the culture of indigenous people, it's also important for the culture of modern people. You cannot take lakes and rivers out of a Canadian life. If you're gonna do that, perhaps Canadians, the rate of suicides or depression are gonna go sky high in Canada, because we are in Canada, people are used to go to the lakes, and even as a landed immigrant, the first things that my Canadian friends took me was actually going to the lakes and going to do fishing or going kayaking or portaging in beautiful landscape of Canada. And imagine if we are not, this not going to be available in the summertime, what's going to happen to the even contemporary culture of the country. And all of this, again, are interconnected. Our food and energy with our industry and drinking water is connected with our culture, and all of us are making a cycle that we know as socioeconomic processes. Okay, so let's go back to this concept of water security. When we have this very good situation of balance between human life and water, basically we call it water secure. If we want to go back to the Jean-Francois Lyotard definition, we basically realize that this is an ideal condition. The reality in the world that we are living now, and this is a statement that actually happening in all time and space in the modern time, we are actually having this situation that are water insecure, but to a different degree of revelation, right? So even in the best country, Canada, for instance, considered as one of the most progressive countries in terms of the water management, the amount of research money that the government of Canada put under the water is actually tremendous. I mean, it's one in it was highest in the world 5 years ago. I'm not aware for now. But actually in Canada, we have lots of indigenous communities in Northern Canada have daily problem of drinking water. And that's again, another revelation of water insecurity, but perhaps not as vivid and not as highlighted and not as critical as we have in our motherland, Iran. So let's now fly to Iran and let's land to a particular part of Iran, which is one of the tipping points. Now we are teaching that in our water resources and water security classes in different parts of the world, the case of the Lake Urmia. So before actually I start talking about the Lake Urmia, I would like to take you to the hydrology of the Lake Urmia, which is basically located in a bowl-shaped catchment on a lowest part of the catchment. So basically, when you look at the Lake Urmia is located in the very bottom line of this catchment. So all the water that actually coming from all these mountains and then passing through important cities and farmlands are coming over here and deposit a lot of sediments, including salt. Salty matters. And that's why Lake Urmia is a salty lake. So basically, this is good to know that basically this is a terminal lake. It is not connected to anywhere. It's just the place that receives the water. And basically what we are doing upstream directly affects the health of this lake. So during this recent time, most importantly, during the 21st century, from the beginning of 21st century, we are seeing a tremendous decline in the area and the volume of the Lake Urmia. So the question is that why this is happening? So one narrative is that this is due to the global warming. That is something that perhaps formal narratives that the officials in Iran want to pursue. But there is actually another narrative that this is saying that this is directly related to the effects that we have in the catchments on the upstream of the lake happening due to the large activities, human activities that we have due to the dam management and then consequently diversion of the water for different purposes, most importantly agriculture. So I am actually coming from this camp. I don't believe that the crisis that we have in Lake Urmia is built on climate change per se. Perhaps climate change or natural climate variability, better word to put that, is triggered this issue. But the problem, the cause of the problem is coming from somewhere else. And for that, I have two arguments. Argument one is coming from the work of the Professor Elmira Hassanzadeh, my partner in life and crime. She's a professor currently at Polytechnique Montreal, and she put together this paper when she was doing her master thesis, in University of Tabriz. And she basically built a model that was able to track all the demands and water management in the upstream of the Lake Urmia. And through that, she was able to track the water level that we see throughout the years from 1967 to 2006 in Lake Urmia. So now she built a model that was able to replicate what's going on into the Lake Urmia. And then she did a set of sensitivity analysis to see what are the contributors for this massive decline in the lake level after the 21st century. So basically what she has done, she started to see whether the dams, the capacity that dams have are triggering into that. That is actually to some extent true, but it is not greatly important because the capacity of dams are limited at the end of the day, comparing to the water availability that we have in the catchment. The other issue is the issue of precipitation. You know, perhaps we have less precipitation. What they have done, they actually tried 3 levels of precipitation: high precipitation, historical precipitation, low historical precipitation, and then the average historical precipitation. And they realized that basically with a little bit more or less precipitation, things are not going to change. Perhaps the precipitation, less precipitation was not the issue that brought down this massive decline in the lake level. So what they have done, then they removed all the demands, agriculture and drinking water demands that define on the catchment upstream of the lake. And when they actually removed that, they were able to basically see that the reason for the decline is massive withdrawal that we have from the catchment. And when you put all of that elements together, dams, less precipitation, and water withdrawal upstream of the lake, then you're going to realize that, yes, this massive decline could have happened. And if we didn't have this massive decline, in fact, the lake was not going below this 1,274 meter above the sea level, which I'm going to talk about that a little bit. That number is an important number, was not going below that number, you know, and that is an important number, 1,274 meter above the sea level. We're going to come back to that. So the argument too is actually wanted to do completely an independent work led by Dr. Agakuchak, that I have the privilege to work with a group of other scientists from throughout the world. And that actually trying to use the completely independent information related to the lake from the satellites, lake level and volume from the satellite remote sensing, and then calculating the standard precipitation index of the lake using the satellite values of the precipitation. So when we put that together, we realize that the decline of the Lake Urmia is not really corresponding with the decline in the precipitation. In fact, the time that we have this massive decline and not going back was coincide with the high value of precipitation. In fact, we were wet years on those years, although we were going down again. So what is the reason for that? The reason, again, we can be found by satellite remote sensing technology. Let's look at the Lake Urmia in 1998 and 2012. We see one thing. Obviously, the area of the lake has been declined, but we see other things as well. Around the lake become greener. So basically, the water that should have gone to the lake, now we are diverting that. We have the power to divert that to the agricultural land, develop our agriculture, and obviously someone needs to pay the price. And who paid the price? The lake. So on one hand, Lake Urmia catchment become one of the areas that basically, I do remember when I was a high school student and early university student in Iran, it was basically one of the glorious part of the country that you know, officials were claiming that providing us a self-sufficiency in food in terms of the food security. But on the other hand, we are seeing that this actually makes an environmental catastrophe. So basically, we can see that, and that is actually another revelation, the very vivid revelation of this current condition of water insecurity, which is actually coming in 2 ways, again, as a duality. You know, we have a boom in development, which is coincide with a doom in environment. And basically, this doom in its environment is not only finished in the lake, in fact, can actually penetrate out of the lake. Remember, I mentioned that's a terminal lake. So basically, all the deposits of sediments is going to go to the lake. So now the lake is dried up, and then a little breeze can actually bring these sediments thousands of kilometers away. And basically, when you, and then they're going to sit on the soil, and when the soil becomes salty, then agriculture is impossible. So, is this catastrophe that we are seeing is something regional, limited in a space, or something countrywide? So let's look actually at the genealogy of water consumption, because if we agree that basically we are living during the Anthropocene, we cannot deny the impact of humans. So let's actually see what human uses the water most in Iran. Obviously, based on the World Bank data, more than 90% of our water consumption is going for the agriculture. So it is easy to say that the agriculture is responsible for the situation that we have. And this is an easy conclusion. But I guess the issue is a little bit more complex than that, because Iranians are known for agriculture for more than 12,000 years. In fact, we are a country of farmers, and we actually developed the first technology of irrigation in the world, and we are actually known as one of the contribution of the Persian civilization in the world. And in fact, the Persian farmers for years, during different dynasties in the countries and different conquerors, Persian farmers has been always regarded as very high rank population and class in Iran. So what's going on that in the modern era, basically when we are doing to the modern agriculture, the situation of Iran become like this? Because we had actually profound drought during in the past 12,000 years. So let's look actually at a little bit more recent years. So I would like to bring this information again from the World Bank and compare that information with the information of the agricultural production, again coming from another source. This is actually the published research from the Iran Ministry of Agriculture, or Jahad Keshavarzi. So this information basically try to communicate the population growth in rural and urban areas, as well as the total population, coincide with the same amount of area of harvested cereals, production of cereals, the main production of agriculture in Iran, and the yield of cereals. So remember that 1963 marks the white revolution in Iran, the time that this traditional agriculture tried to revolutionize and become modern, right? So what happened from there? We are seeing that actually from right after the white revolution, we are seeing an incline in the population of urban areas, and kind of like a narrower increase comparing to the urban areas in the rural area. And imagine the population of Iran in rural areas was more than the urban areas. In 1980s, just in the beginning of the war with Iraq, we are actually, the population of urban areas is increasing from the rural areas, and then rural areas after 1990s, after the end of the war, the population is decreasing. At the same time, look at what's going on. Our harvested area is increasing, our production is increasing, our yield is increasing. So how come the population is decreasing, the farmers are decreasing, but our land of harvested area is increasing, our production is increasing, and our yield is increasing? Well, the answer is that we mechanize agriculture over the land. But one thing that we did not pay attention to the land stewardship and the people who actually steward the land as farmers, as traditional farmers. And that's why we are running this highly mechanized agriculture with the water efficiency of around 35%, which means that if we are actually diverting the water, around 3 liters of water, only 1 liter of that gonna get to the land. Most of that is gonna be destroyed in the process or evaporated. Anyway, it's not gonna get to the plants. So this is a structural problem, and we can see that the impact of that on many parts. Let's look at the surface water resources first. So let's actually look at the water balance equation in Iran. Is a famous water balance equation. basically says that what is coming in is equal to what is going out plus the changes in the storage. So precipitation is what is coming into the catchment, evapotranspiration is what's going out, and ds to dt is the changes in the storage. We have a component. Human can actually divert water into the land. So every catchment receives some input from human diversion. That's gonna be equal to what is actually going out of the catchment as a natural water, such as the rivers or groundwater, or what is actually human takes out of the land. And that's actually equal to the total flux of the water that is going out of the catchment. So if we actually normalize this amount, the amount of the human takes to the amount of total flux, we realize how much of the natural water in the catchment is used by human. Okay, so let's look at the situation in Iran. So this is all the catchments in Iran. We are seeing that actually in the majority of the country, we are using the total part of the water, the flux of the water that can go out of the catchment, we are taking it all for ourselves. A good example of that is Lake Urmia. We are getting absolutely complete amount of the water, near absolute 100%. And basically the situation, what is United Nations suggests is 25%. So we only need to use 25% of the water. 75% of the water needs to stay for the nature. None of our catchment, in fact, only one catchment on the west border in the Aras is the situation that is a catchment that actually meet that qualification. Other catchment of Iran are stressed into different degrees. And that is because we are using a lot of water. So I would like you to remember 4 of the catchments that I'm going to bring back, but let me just crystallize this catchment. First, remember Urumia Lake, remember Karkhe, remember Karun, and Jarrahi Zohre. So Urumia Lake is a lake which is already stressed. We talk about that. Karkhe, Karun, and Jarrahi are the places that we have a lot of socioeconomic activities. We have a lot of agriculture, and they have naturally a lot of water. And that's why we are seeing they are not very much stressed. They are stressed, but not to extreme level of stress. Let's remember Lake Urmia and these 3. I'm going to come back to this in few slides. But actually, the problem that we are seeing is that if we are decreasing the amount of water, basically by 50%. So it means that only increase our agricultural efficiency to 70%, something around the in the global rates in the developed countries. Then we're going to solve the problem to a great extent in the catchments of Iran. So let's look at the groundwater. Surface water, we see the drying lakes and river, but groundwater we are not seeing. So I'm basically providing another report of the groundwater, and that is actually the situation, the inventory that we did on all the aquifers on Iran, and we realized that all the aquifers on Iran has depleted in the 14 years of 2005 to 2004 to 2016, and some places even to gigantic number of 2,600%. 26 times decline in the water level, gigantic level. So basically, if we are looking at that and where this decline happened, we are seeing that most of our population, 75% of our population are living in places that the groundwater is very high or extremely depleted, and which means that if we are taking more than 1.5 times more than the recharge that going to the lake, because we are using already the recharge on the surface as well. What needs to go to the groundwater? Remember that connection that we have between the elements of the water in the nature. Now we basically disturb that. So the water is not going to the groundwater. And basically that can actually jeopardize the agriculture security in Iran, food security, because 70% of the land, 65% of the land, in fact, is located in places that are stressed by groundwater depletion. Okay, so let's look at the inventory of the groundwater. That's actually coming from the very interesting work that we have done in Concordia University, lead of Dr. Samana Ashraf, and that was the inventory of the groundwater in Iran from 2001 to 2015. And basically comparing that with all natural elements of the groundwater storage. So if we are looking at the groundwater depletion, which is the total amount of depletion in Iran, and if we are looking at the precipitation, we are not seeing that, perhaps we have high amount of precipitation, some wet years, but we have more depletion on those years. And that is one of the reasons that we are not letting the water go to the groundwater. Our recharge is decreasing tremendously through the years because we are using the water in the surface. We are not letting the water to go down. Obviously, we are taking the water more from the ground. Number of wells are increasing during these years, and the storage is taking less. The interesting is that we are letting more water to go in because basically we are putting the water into our agriculture land. Our efficiency is low. Some parts of the water is going in, but this water definitely is not able to compensate the water that we take out. That's why we are going down into the lake, into the groundwater reserve. And there is two issues here. So the amount of the water that we take from the aquifers is actually decreasing over the land, although we are taking more of the natural flux out. So this is actually showing a critical case that in fact, we are like taking the water from a bucket that is already depleting. We are taking more water from a bankrupted bucket already. So that's actually providing the tipping point. And if we are looking at the causality of that, we are seeing that the causality of that is by the lack of less water going to the ground and more water that we are taking out of the ground. That is actually the dominant process that revealed itself in the country. So if we are now looking at this tragedy and coincide that with the number of wells, the amount of water that we are taking out and the amount of net flux that we take out of the water, number of wells are increasing, although the amount of water that we are taking out is decreasing. So it means that we are miserably digging the ground to take the water out of the aquifer that already does not have any more water to give us. Although we are not getting the learn of the lesson, we are still trying to get out the water. We are basically put more stress of the aquifer that is already greatly stressed. Unfortunately, that again, the story like the Lake Urmia doesn't only stop in the groundwater aquifer. We see the revelation of this catastrophe in other parts of the environment. So this is actually the map of salinity in Iran, change in the electric conductivity, which is a proxy for the salinity. In all parts of the Iran, during the inventory that we have done on the groundwater, we realized that the electric conductivity consistently increased over the all landmass of Iran. And when we look at it, we realize that this is actually correspond with the decline in the groundwater reserve. We basically take the water out of the aquifer. Therefore, the density of the salt and other matters into the soil and water gonna increase. Is no brainer. And the main reason for that, because we are taking a lot of water out of our aquifer. So that is the issue causing that. So one of the issues is salinity. I'm very fearful about that because that can actually disturb the 2,000 years of legacy of agriculture that we have over this land. The other issue that we can actually see is the land subsidences and basically cracking of the land. And we are not only seeing that in the rural areas, we actually seeing it in the major cities of the country, Isfahan and Tehran. There are lots of recent reports about that. So this is the current situation. Let's see what's going to be the future situation. So that is actually the place I want to bring you back. The four basically catchment that I identify. Lake Urmia is the most disturbed catchment of Iran,
And this catchment, Karkhe, Karun, and Jarrahi, that are strategic for water management and agriculture production in Iran, for water and food security. Remember that the water, part of this water is also going to the other countries, so it is actually, we have the relevance in terms of transboundary water. That's another security issue, geopolitical security that's coming into play. So the point is that these three catchments that I actually identified as basically, relatively good catchments in Iran and providing a lot of food for the country, is in fact by a little bit of increase in their water use, they can become water stress. This is the example for the Karkhe, which actually just a little bit of increase, 10%, 30%, and 50% increase in the amount of water that they are using, or the amount of evaporation that we might have due to the warming climate, they're going to become water stress. And we see that with less amount of severity in Jarrahi and Karun. But again, we are seeing that the situation is very vulnerable to a slightest change into the amount of evapotranspiration or the human takeout of the watershed. So if we are looking at the precipitation using the future projection of the precipitation coming from the global climate models, we realize that in fact the precipitation is not going to change that much tremendously comparing to the baseline situation in the future condition. Let's actually have a better look here. For instance, in Urmia Lake, if we want to look at only the precipitation, yes, the precipitation is going to be declined and the situation is going to get worse if we are not doing anything about it, right? But in fact, in other catchments, for instance, in Karun, we're going to receive a better amount of precipitation. So even if we are not doing anything, we keep the status as what it is now, we're going to get better situation in Karun, and also, for instance, in a catchment like Jarrahi. However, if we impose that 10% to 50% more in water use, that we are actually socioeconomically and based on the grand policies of the country, we are going toward that direction, and the increase in the evapotranspiration that we're going to have due to the climate change, we're going to actually get to a very combined severe situation that we're going to get much worse than the previous cases that we have in the catchment. So really the country is getting dried out if we are not doing anything about it. So what we see, unfortunately, in Iran is a man-made crisis that is actually triggered by climate variability of change. Unfortunately, the case of Iran became a substance of a paper we recently published in Review of Geophysics about a new concept of anthropogenic drought. And we really try to define this concept and basically coin that concept. And the issue is that the dark side, if that is not only about the drought, in fact, we have the same situation about the high water availabilities and then the time that we call it flood. In fact, in Iran, we see revelation of the anthropogenic floods, that basically the man-made floods that's created by a little bit of precipitation. We have a paper on review on that is going to come out soon, and I'm not going to discuss that through this talk. What I want to say is that the good thing is that we talk about all the dark side of the story. There is basically some hope as well in the story, and I would like to bring that again to the Lake Urmia and basically investigate the crisis that we have. So basically, the crisis starts in Lake Urmia when we have started to increase our amount of total withdrawal during a prolonged drought that we have almost 48% decrease in runoff. We basically ignore this amount of prolonged drought. We define 25% more increase in water withdrawal, mainly on the potable water. And that actually, because we give that previously potable water to the plants and agriculture, so now we need to define new potable water. So now what is actually happened is that basically the lake was not able to revive. So now when we are in this situation, we need to define a new normal. And this new normal is coming basically looking at the different state of the lake health, considering the demands that we define on the lakes. And based on this analysis, we realize as a ecological level new normal for the health of the lake as 1,274 meters above the surface level. That was the ecological level that came out of also the Dr. Hassanzadeh paper back in 2012 as the place that the lake was able to go back. So we defined that basically, again, that number was confirmed, but also the lake levels during the wet years and dry years. However, that requires that basically we accept some level of water stress in the lake, accepting that the lake is not going to be fully recovered. So if we are actually accepting that and accepting that part of this demand, we are not able to take it more, we are able to better make the agriculture use better, but we are not able to take the water out of the people, tap. So if we are considering that, then we come to a roadmap of basically revival of the lake, depending of the situation, hydrologic situation that we have. Basically, we realize that in order to get to the ecological level, even in a worst case scenario of water stress, historical water stress in the lake, if we are diverting around 2,900 million cubic meter per year, then we're going to be able to revive the lake to the ecological level in 16 years. So there is a hope, but that's required that we are ready to 40% decrease in our withdrawal. Basically, it means that we are doubling up our irrigation efficiency or close up the land, some of the lands that we have. Okay, let's wrap up because I would like to actually also have discussions. So let's accept that it's 2 days before the Earth Days. Let's breathe the earth and realize that we are living in a new geological epoch called the Anthropocene. And this is particularly the case in Iran. So then we look at the water resources in Iran. Obviously, we are living in a dry land, but also there is also issues here that we, due to the population growth, short-sighted and unsustainable policy for agriculture and land management, and the most important issue that is actually not very much attended, and that is lack of stewardship, lack of traditional indigenous people over the land, we created a crisis in Iran. This crisis can be partially sorted if we really decide to revolutionize land and water management in Iran. Water infrastructure should be renewed and updated, and agriculture and other socioeconomic activities need to be adapted to the new reality of the country. There is a solution to everything, but there is also expiry date, and time is ticking for Iran. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for this amazing and comprehensive presentation of research findings and ultimately policy recommendations. So this was quite enriching of all the presentations that I have personally seen about water crisis in Iran and the situation with Lake Urmia. This was definitely most fundamental and enriching in every aspect. So thank you very much for taking the time to share your body of knowledge with us in such a generous and easy to comprehend, both visually and audio-wise, everything that you shared with us. We've had a couple of questions that have come our way. We don't have much time left, so we'll just go to the ones that I think are more pertinent to our webinar here. One question that has come in is, what can I do as a member of Iranian diaspora to improve the situation in Iran?
This is a great question, actually, and maybe that's why I stopped talking to media about that, because it's not a prescription for everybody. The problem in Iran is very complex. It's top down and bottom up. So obviously there is a structural issue in water use and land use in Iran that basically, unfortunately, citizens are not able to decide on that. In democratic countries, you are able to vote to platform of the policymakers, and that's actually the basic of how some of the environmental policies are actually going to the platform of politicians. So in Iran, due to the restrictions that we have in the political system, perhaps that is not very much possible. But we are even doing that. The Mian Kalle actually, petrochemical compound was actually a good example. Even now we are seeing that there is a step back. So I guess what the community and bottom up can be done, first of all, growing awareness. I think there is no issue if actually our agricultural students or water resources students are actually going to the fields of agricultural field and see how they can contribute into improving, what is actually going on the ground. I know that there are some students union in Iran are doing these great works, and these are actually something that is small, but in fact, the small is very beautiful and can be very constructive at the same time. That's my 2 cents here, unfortunately.
Fantastic. No, fortunately, that's quite helpful. Another question that's interesting is, how do we educate farmers about irrigation and water management? I think they mean the farmers in Iran, obviously.
Yes. So obviously, farmers need to be informed. In fact, if I encountered with, now unfortunately with not farmers in Iran, but what I actually encountered with farmers in Canada is that they are in fact very interested to hear, because they are the stewards of the land. They obviously want to improve their production, and most of the time when you present them the policies, they're going to be actually proactive in implementing them. So I guess the issues would be going to the farm and talking to the farmers. I know that there are some socio-hydrology research are started to grow in Iran, some very interesting work even in the catchment of the Lake Urmia, and now we are seeing that the farmers that contributed in this socio-hydrology program and basically contributed into the policy making are now the farmers that are taking these policies. So the best thing is actually bring the knowledge on the ground.
Yes, absolutely. We have learned at every level that if we are not in a position to act at the grassroots level, there is no real impact, no sustainable impact. So it's absolutely essential, as you said, to start small, because that's quite effective more often than not, and to start with the grassroots level. So education seems to be perhaps one of the most revolutionary ways of addressing this particular challenge. One other question that has come in that's interesting is, what is your offer to modernize our agriculture system, to sort of improve the situation and persuade the farmers to utilize the new forms of farming?
When we talk about farming, we need to basically diverge the technology that we are using for the production and the infrastructure that we are using for water and land management. So in terms of the infrastructure that are used over the ground, the technologies such as the tractor, combine, and these machineries, in fact, I don't think that we can add anything more. We are, the World Bank statistics showing that we are increasing the yield, we are increasing the agricultural land and irrigation area. So we do have those technologies. What we are missing actually is land management and water infrastructure management. In fact, it is, why should 3 liters of water be diverted from a river and only 1 liter of that get into the plant? This is a fundamental question. For that, we need to modernize our water diversion system. The water diversion system in Iran is very traditional, is not basically using any pipe or anything. We just divert the water into the kirks, and then some of that water is going into the ground, going to the aquifer, but the amount that we take from the water is much more than is going to the aquifer. So we need to modernize that for sure. And even in our domestic water use, in Tehran is a very disturbing number that we realize in different parts of Tehran we are wasting 45 to 55% of the water just because of the leaking in our water diversion system. If these problems are solved, then I guess the water problem in Iran is solved. This is, I'm not against the agriculture, because agriculture is part of the legacy of our motherland. I'm not saying that the agriculture need to be, compensated for industry or services. I'm saying that we just need to, do the agriculture better, or, simply respect the environment rather than anything else, and give the rate of the nature back to it.
Wonderful. One final question is it possible to conduct nexus studies, to have a holistic investigation of human water systems?
This is a good question, but, when we come into the nexus issues, if we are talking about the nexus in terms of what we know in the scientific literature, then the issue become very case dependent. And obviously, it's going to be holistic over a case. One issue that actually I hope I could convey the message in my presentation, I start from a problem of the Lake Urmia, then upscale, try to see the revelation in other part of the, water system in Iran, both surface and groundwater. But then when I wanted to provide the solution, I again go back to the case. And that is actually the reality that we need to understand. When we want to give a prescription or want to basically solve a problem, we need to go back to the problem that we have in hand. On those problems, if we want to look at the case-specific problem, if the information is available, definitely the nexus approach can be a very good approach to look at the problem. However, one of the issues in Iran is the lack of data. One disturbing thing that actually I witnessed, and I would like to mention it here, is that when we published the paper of the inventory of the groundwater in Iran, the paper that actually the data of that all coming from the formal data of the Ministry of Environment. After this paper was published, we realized and received a lot of emails that basically the data has been removed from the website of the Ministry of Environment. So then you see, when you do not have information to build this nexus model, then if you use the nexus approach, it might be a double sword place, because it might actually result in overlooking some of the aspects that, because of the lack of data, we are not able, our nexus model is not able to reveal it. However, if the data is available, definitely this is the state-of-the-art approach.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So given the fact that Earth Day 22 is upon us in 48 hours or so, and as we know, this year there is a great global cleanup campaign that has been launched by Earth Day organization. They're asking for a worldwide campaign to remove billions of pieces of trash from neighborhoods, beaches, rivers, lakes, trails, and parks. And we're supposed to reduce waste and plastic pollution and improve habitats and prevent harm to wildlife and humans. What is it that perhaps we could do to raise awareness between now and the start of Friday to help our fellow Iranians in Iran and anyone who is engaging in any kind of interaction with Iran? Because as we know, we are living at a time where we need holistic action. So it's, and as Earth Day campaign states all over its publications, that we're in this together. Businesses, governments, and individuals must act together to make a dent. So if there was something that we could do, you and I, you sitting in Canada, here I am in the UK, some of the participants from around the world, what could we do to not only make a difference in our local community, but with regard to Lake Urmia and our native land of Iran, what could we do to improve the situation? What choices could we make?
I mean, in 2 days, it's tough, huh? But what I suggest that actually, let's actually raise awareness. The attendance of the participants here and the fact that we are discussing these things is actually a very glorious fact that we are actually experiencing at the moment. Given the spirit of the Earth Day today, this year, what I suggest in the next 2 days, we make our hand dirty and make our neighborhood
cleaner while we are reflecting on the time that we are living. I guess recognizing the Anthropocene and breathing the air in the Anthropocene will help us to understand our responsibility as a human being to basically be kinder to the nature and to each other.
Fantastic. I don't think we could have closed on a better note. It is indeed us, the human factor, that make all the difference. And so, as you said, let's get our hands dirty and our environment clean and make sure that we are kind to Mother Nature, learn from our Aboriginal populations all over the planet, including in Iran, and where you are speaking from in Canada, and place far greater importance on the role that Mother Nature plays in our lives, and to respect and with a great deal of emphasis on kindness, help each other and the environment to have a brighter future. Thank you again, Professor Nazemi, for this fantastic webinar. I'm sure it will be viewed by many more individuals on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page during the coming days and weeks. Happy Earth Day to you and to all the participants here. And we look forward to welcoming you to our next webinar next month. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed for having me. And thanks a lot for all the participants.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.